Thank you for joining us for today's event, Public Service Loan Forgiveness. It's for you, presented by Kyra Hahn. Kyra is a professional librarian with over 20 years of experience and is a longtime advocate of student loan reform and empowerment of graduate students and borrowers. This event is being hosted by the Colorado State Library. My name is Christy Moran. My pronouns are she and Aya. I am the Adult Library Services Senior Consultant, or as I'd like to say, a librarian for librarians and library staff in Colorado. Live captioning was going to be provided in this session. Please, if you need to, enable the captions, and we'll use Zoom's AI to do that. Likewise, on YouTube, we can use the closed captioning features when you view this later. Today's event is being recorded, and all registrants, regardless of whether or not you attended, will receive an email with a link to the recording and a PDF of all the slides and any resources shared. Our presenter will leave some time for questions at the end of their presentation. So please hold your questions until it's time for that Q&A. And now to our presenter. Kyra, take it away.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining today's webinar and sharing this session. Give me 1 second to share my screen so that you can actually see the slides. Okay, is everyone able to see the screen?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. So today's session is public service loan forgiveness. It is for you because it is, no matter what people may try to say. My name is Kyra Hahn. I also am a moderator of a Facebook group called Librarian for PSLF. PSLF stands for Public Service Loan Forgiveness. And I've been doing this advocacy work since 2017. I do have a land acknowledgement. And I do want to make sure that I highlight that we are on Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho people's lands in the Denver area. I'm not going to read the whole thing, though, just for the sake of time, but it is included within the slides. I know this is a popular topic, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we're going to cover, and then we'll get to questions at the end of this session. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover two big loan forgiveness programs. The biggest one is public service loan forgiveness. And that's accessible to anyone who works 30 or more hours a week in public service for 10 or more years. Income-driven repayment forgiveness. This is a newer one, and I'll touch on that. And then lastly, we're going to talk about changes to student loan servicing. There have been a lot, particularly over the past year, and I want to make sure everyone is up to speed on the latest information available. So I'm going to jump right into public service loan forgiveness. For the sake of this presentation, I am just going to call it PSLF because public service loan forgiveness is quite a mouthful, and I'll be saying it a lot. So I wanted to make sure that I spelled out what that is. There are three main requirements for public service loan forgiveness. One is you have to have the right kind of loans. So this is for federal student loans. And for federal student loans, there's more than one loan type. The ones that qualify for public service loan forgiveness are direct loans. If you have older FFEL loans, under the William Ford program, those were typically issued before 2010. You can consolidate into a direct loan, and then your loans will qualify for forgiveness in the future. The second qualification that is significant is you have to work in public service. So you need to be working at least one job, although I recognize that some folks may work more than one public service job in order to meet the 30 plus hour requirement to be considered full-time. So it doesn't all have to be at one single employer. It just means that you will submit forms for each. And that employment has to have occurred from 2007 to present. The key thing here is you need to make 120 qualifying payments. Now, 120 payments equals 10 years, and you need to do this on a qualifying repayment plan for PSLF. The third requirement is repayment plans. You must enroll into an income-driven repayment plan. There are 4 eligible repayment plans, and they are income contingent, income driven, pay, which is short for pay as you earn, and save on valuable education, which is the newest repayment plan. We will talk about those more as we progress through the presentation. So here are the 4 qualifying repayment plans. If you are on a repayment plan that does not appear on this page, it is not a qualifying repayment plan for PSLF. And so payments on any repayment plan that does not qualify for PSLF will not count towards the qualifying 120 payment requirement. Let's see. Also, I want to make sure that I remember to mention that when you are in an income-driven repayment plan, you do have to recertify your income every year. So for SAVE, that's the newest one. I do need to mention that that is currently under a court challenge, and we will be discussing that later in the presentation. Income-based repayment is one of the older ones, and that repayment plan is based on 10 to 15% of your income. Pay is pay as you earn. This repayment plan is now available on a limited basis. It was based on 10% of your income. However, they are no longer accepting new enrollments as of July 1st of this year. And that is the payment plan that will be accessible to any parents that have borrowed for Parent Plus loans. The last one is income contingent repayment. This one is also an older repayment plan. I believe this one started as early as the 1970s. This one is also no longer accepting new enrollments as of July 1st. This repayment plan was based on 20% of income. So I believe I may have misspoke earlier about pay. It's income contingent that is the repayment plan most accessible for Parent Plus loan borrowers. So one other thing that I want to make sure that I mention is that when you're applying for income-driven repayment, you do have to recertify annually. I do want to make sure that I mention that the recertification deadline has been extended until November 1st of 2024. So that is the earliest that you would have to recertify your income. You can apply for income-driven repayment plans both online at Federal Student Aid, or you can print out the forms. And I've included links within the presentation. So any of the teal underline print, those are actual live links that you can use, and it will link directly to the information resource that you're looking for. Also, I encourage folks, if you are looking to apply for an income-driven repayment plan, please, I encourage you to use the loan simulator. This is an online tool that will help estimate payments for the different repayment plans that are available. I highly recommend it as a tool to try and figure out what your payments may be. If you log into your account on Federal Student Aid, it will model it on your federal student loans that they have on file. You will need to recertify annually, and basically what this means is that you're going to have to provide personal income information each year. Typically, you're going to do that with your most recent tax return. Student aid then uses that information in order to calculate what your payment amount will be, and it will be valid for the next year. One change that we have started to see is some borrowers are now receiving statements that show what the student loan payment may be if you don't recertify. So please be aware of that. But yes, typically your IRS income tax records are the preferred information for personal income. Okay, the most important part of PSLF is the form. Christy, if you can you put the link to that form in the chat? Part of the reason why I'm asking for this to be done is I get a lot of questions about submitting the form. You can submit the form either online or you can do the PDF version. We're sharing the PDF version with you because I want everyone to have an idea of what the form looks like. And so I have a copy of the image on this slide as well as a link to the form. One thing that I do want to call people's attention to is that these forms have dates. They have expiration dates. So make sure that you're paying attention and that you have the most current form. Because they do change slightly what information is in the form. Submitting this form annually is highly recommended. I also cannot stress this enough. This is the form that drives your qualifying payment count updates. So every time you submit one of these forms, Department of Ed receives it, they go by the signature date on it, they contact your employer, and pretty much if everything has been completed correctly, they're going to update your payment counts from the date that the form was signed. So if you have logged into your account on Federal Student Aid and it has a category that says employment needing certification or payments need to be certified, this is what they're asking for. Please note that this must be signed both by you and your employer, typically an HR representative. Oftentimes, these forms may get rejections or held up because something wasn't filled out correctly. So I always want to make sure that I highlight those things. Generally, it's the first 3 to 4 pages of the form that need to be submitted. Although when you go to print out the PDF, it is 12 pages, I think, total. And so the additional pages have answers to questions, some terminology, and also have information on where to send it to. And because there have been so many changes, I encourage people to check that information as well. Also, I encourage folks to save their forms for any reason in case you need to resubmit them. Things happen all the time. and it comes in handy when you can just easily pull out a previous form you've submitted and resubmit it again. All right, now we're going to talk about income-driven repayment plan forgiveness. So, while income-driven repayment plans are a requirement for PSLF, income-driven repayment plans are actually widely available to any borrower. So any borrower can access income-driven repayment plans, and if they've paid on their loans for 20 to 25 years of payments, then if there's a remaining balance, that is eligible to be discharged. So for 20 years, that means that people have made 240 payments, and that's for undergraduate loans. If you have graduate loans in the mix, it's going to be an additional 5 years, so you're looking at 300 payments total. This was brought to public awareness thanks to an NPR investigation in 2021 that discovered that payment tracking was not being done by loan servicers in order to support this program. So I have to give Corey Turner over at NPR major kudos, and as well as other advocacy groups that presented this to Department of Ed. So that's why we're talking about these two big programs. So how do you apply for income-driven repayment forgiveness? Well, there's no application necessary. Department of Ed is going through as they audit accounts and as they are doing payment count updates, they are granting forgiveness when the terms are met. So payment counts may be coming soon after the account updates are completed in 2024, but they already have plans on doing payment count updates, both for public service loan forgiveness and now for income-driven repayment forgiveness. So there's a chance that after these improvements are made, that there will now be a secondary payment count for tracking IDR forgiveness. So for income-driven repayment forgiveness, the stats for forgiveness started off really low at like 32 people getting forgiveness as of 2021 when NPR did their investigation. And now, as of April of 2024, 996,000 borrowers have received $49.2 billion in income-driven repayment forgiveness. And the reason why this is huge to me is because you shouldn't be paying all your student loans for life. To me, this is like a mortgage. So this is really exciting to hear that, Department of Ed has been working to do right and do the right thing by borrowers and honor this congressional stipulated requirement of a certain length of payment term. All right, now changes to student loan servicing. Changes have been constant to student loan servicing since 2021. Well, actually 2019. I'll say 2019, but definitely for sure when the COVID pandemic hit. So there's a lot of changes to cover. One of the things that happened during the summer is student aid transitioned to a new servicing platform. There's also been changes to the companies that are servicing our student loans. I am happy to report that Navient will no longer be a loan servicer for student loans going forward. And that's due to numerous complaints and servicing problems that have occurred in the past. Also, you will see that the website addressing has changed. Department of Ed and Student Aid are taking a more active oversight role. And so now what you'll start to see is the name of the loan servicer .studentaid.gov in the website addressing. So those are not scams. Those are legitimate changes that have been instituted by Department of Ed and in partnership with the loan servicing companies. Also, Department of Ed is doing more oversight for qualifying payment counts. I cannot stress this enough. Make sure that your personal contact information, i.e. your email address, is up to date. I have talked to several borrowers who don't necessarily check their accounts often, and there have been communications that have been sent regarding when repayment is going to start, how much your payment may be, and this was particularly true as we were coming off the forbearance. Also, I want to stress that studentaid.gov is your main primary information source and website for student loan information. So they are doing the payment account updates, and those are going to be in progress throughout 2024. They've also made some updates regarding online form submissions. If you use the PSLF help tool that is available online, now when you complete that, it will now email your loan servicer. So there have also been changes to repayment plans. Now we're down to 4. And some borrowers are currently in an unrequested forbearance, and we will talk about that in a second. So if you are a borrower who is on the SAVE repayment plan, which is the newest repayment plan, you all have been placed into a no interest forbearance. However, I do need to make sure that I mention that this forbearance is due to legal challenges, and until courts make decisions, we don't know how long this forbearance period is going to last. The forbearance is interest-free. However, the time that you're in this particular forbearance will not count towards your PSLF qualifying payment counts. And this is different than what has occurred in the past during the COVID pandemic. So I want to make sure that I highlight that and mention that. There are potential options to change to a different repayment plan. However, based on all of the reports that I've seen, this is a challenge at this time, and it's 90 or more days to change your repayment plan. Also, this is impacting a huge number of borrowers. It's estimated that it's impacting up to 25 million borrowers, and that's 25% of borrowers that are impacted by this SAVE repayment forbearance. Also, the latest news that I have to share as of this morning is that I learned that the decision has been pushed out by the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals for an additional 2 weeks. So, although the Biden administration was hoping to launch some sort of loan forgiveness before elections, we're highly doubtful that this is going to happen now because of the timing of this legal stay. Just because you're in forbearance does not mean that you have to give up hope. There are other tools available to help you get to student loan forgiveness quicker. So, one of the ones that I want to make sure that I highlight is PSLF buyback. This is a new program that was announced, and basically it is targeting borrowers that have 10 years of employment, but not 120 qualifying payments. So this is important because a lot of folks who have borrowed in the past have participated in deferments or forbearance periods, and typically those periods don't count towards the 120 qualifying payment requirement. So this is a way that you can get to forgiveness faster, and I've included the link for that. And then also I want to talk about Fresh Start. So some borrowers are in default status. What does default even mean? Default means that you haven't been able to make payments for over 270 days or 9 months. So this basically puts the loans not in good standing. So they're going to be adversely reported on your credit report. This can lead to potential wage garnishment or loss of tax refunds or Social Security benefits. They do have a program that coincided with the recent on-ramp program, and it allows borrowers who are in default to get their loans out of default. It's a one-time opportunity to rehabilitate the loans and be able to access an income-driven repayment plan, which typically is not allowed until the loans are in good standing. If this applies to someone that you know or to you, for instance, please be aware that the deadline for this program ends at the end of September on the 30th. And I do want to make sure that I mention that for the on-ramp period, that that is ending this month as well. And so there will, if you are now late on your student loan payments after September, they will begin reporting adversely on credit reports. During the on-ramp period, they were not reporting to the credit bureaus. Okay, so before I get into handling account disputes, I do want to leave you with a nugget of hope, and that is, to date, student loan forgiveness has netted $69 billion in forgiveness for 946,000 public service workers, for borrower defense or closed school discharges due to the rule changes that have been made. 28.7 billion has been forgiven for borrowers eligible for that. And for borrowers experiencing a total or permanent disability, they have received $14.1 billion in forgiveness for 548,000 borrowers. So I just wanted to make sure that I left you with that and let you know that these programs actually do work for people. Of course, account disputes are going to come up. And so here's my general strategy that I like to share with folks for how to handle these. I generally recommend starting with your student loan servicer. Log on to the website, check your account, and don't be afraid to ask questions, especially if you don't understand something. If the representative that you get on the phone does not understand, please don't hesitate to ask for a supervisor. If you still aren't getting progress, I always encourage folks to visit Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. They have a student loans page of which I've included the link. You can file an online complaint with them. And the reason why I like recommending CFPB is because they actually put together annual reports for Congress. So every time you make a complaint, guess what? You end up being a data point in their reports that they give to Congress as to how things are going. And they also compel a response within a certain time frame. So that's why I typically encourage that. The second place you can start is make sure you're checking your account information on studentaid.gov. On that website's going to show you more information and different aspects of your account information. Go beyond the dashboard. Check to see, you can go there and find out what types of loans you have, whether or not they've been consolidated or not. There's a ton of information that you can find out just by looking at your account there. And then lastly, the last category is ombudsman offices or ombuds people. I do want to highlight that the state of Colorado has an ombudsperson's office, and they aid in resolving student loan issues. They are part of the Attorney General's office, and I've included a link to their page as well. I have used them for their services, and they are great advocates. They also oversee student loan companies that operate within the state of Colorado. So I've had very good luck with them, and I encourage folks to use their online complaint tool. Someone will respond to you, I promise. And then lastly, Student Aid offers an ombudsman group as well. There's a little bit more preparation that is necessary for the process. I have worked with them as well, and they aid in negotiating disputes on accounts for all the parties involved. However, I will add a caveat that on the website, it says to use them as a last resort. That may be true just because of the volume that they are experiencing, but I've had good luck with all three of these resources that I recommend for handling disputes. All right, and here is a QR code that I have. You will get this with the slides. You can also scan it now and have access to the supportive resources that I've put together to help you with the evolving journey of navigating your student loans. And also I have included I get a lot of questions about new college graduates and what should they do. So I made sure this time to include a little bit of information for what they can expect. And let's go ahead and open it up to questions. Let's see, let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Hi, Kyra. So there's a question in the chat right now, but before you answer that, I want to call attention to two previous questions. I believe you answered them, but I just want to make sure that they get asked.
Okay.
So Bethany had asked, can borrowers recertify even in light of the SAVE lawsuit? I believe you just answered that question.
Well, I actually don't recommend certifying before you have to. You can. And I have included a link in the resources for the most up-to-date guidance that is being offered on student aid because they have recently updated their FAQs due to all that is going on.
Okay. So the other question from
but
Allison
in
is,
general, I tell folks not to recertify before their time, only because you're going to stay on whatever repayment plan or whatever repayment amount you were on before all this mess started. So if you're comfortable with that payment, then don't change a thing. just wait until they reach out to you and tell you you have to recertify.
okay. And then Allison's question is also a SAVE plan question. So I'll let you answer that if you see it in the chat, which is if you have a loan under the SAVE plan and make a payment now while under forbearance, would that count for your qualifying payments?
So during this legal forbearance, Department of Ed, and this is because this is a legal action, right? Legally, Department of Ed cannot apply your payment. They will make note that they have received the payment, but it will not be applied to your account until after this forbearance period is lifted. So there's not a way right now for borrowers to get PSLF credit until these legal questions are resolved. This is like the top most popular question that's trending right now is like, how can I still get credit? Well, right now, if you are a SAVE borrower, you cannot. And that is because the courts, the courts are limiting it. And they have to honor and respect what the courts say. They can't forgive early. And what's interesting is that part of the lawsuits that are challenging the SAVE plan, one of the accusations actually is accusing Department of Ed of preparing, not even actual forgiveness, preparing and trying to educate the loan servicers for when it gets lifted, this is what we plan to forgive. So just to give you an example, when the forbearance gets lifted, 25 million borrowers will probably be able to get forgiveness right away. Like I said, the only other way around it is to consider changing your repayment plan, but estimates that I've heard are a minimum of 90 days, if not longer.
Okay, thank you for that. So there are a few questions that are really related. So I'll read a couple of them and have you answer them maybe all together. Do I need to make 120 payments before I apply for PSLF or apply first and then make 120 payments? Another one is it recommended to certify or apply before the 10-year/120 payments are met?
Okay, so
Those two.
I'm gonna go ahead and tackle those two. And this is part of the reason why we put the link to the actual PSLF form into the chat. So here's the thing. The form serves two purposes, okay? You're using it to certify your employment. And way back in the day, it actually used to be called the employment certification form. And they had a separate form for forgiveness. Now, in order to streamline it and make it a little bit easier, they combined it all into one form. So you're going to use the same form for certifying your employment and getting those qualifying payments to count. And then when you've hit your 120, there is a box on the form, which is why I always encourage people to look at the form. When you're ready, there's a box that will allow you to check it and say, I'm applying for final forgiveness, right? And what happens during that process is they then put your account into an administrative forbearance so that they can check to see if you've met all the requirements, and then they do the forgiveness processing. So if you submit that form and try to apply for final forgiveness before you get 120, you're going to get a rejection saying, unfortunately, you've not met all the requirements. So all you have to do is reapply again. I will not, oh my goodness, the number of times I had to reapply for final forgiveness is ridiculous. So please don't be afraid to do that.
That changed, by the way, because I put in the chat, I was one of the few people, like very few people who've gotten cancellation, but it was because I was constantly recertifying and constantly complaining to the CFPB. But that has changed because it used to be the employment certification form, and now it's the same form. So there are a few more questions. And in answering a couple of these together, I think you'll answer quite a few others. So for individuals who have been paying on an IDR, that's the IDR plan for about 7 years, could these payments be combined with PSLF to qualify for forgiveness? And there was another one. That one. We could try that one.
Okay, so let me explain how the qualifying payment account works. So for public service loan forgiveness, income-driven repayment plans are required. It's a requirement of PSLF, right? So they're not counting the payments twice. They're counting it once for the PSLF program, but they're also now doing secondary tracking for income-driven repayment plan. And the reason why I say that is because, remember, income-driven repayment plans are available to any borrower. You don't have to work in public service to access those. And that's an important point that I want to reiterate. So they're doing, Department of Ed is having to do a separate tracking for income-driven repayments because there is a component that was built into them that was approved by Congress previously, and Congress actually approves income repayment plans and the terms of them. So in order to meet the terms for folks that have been paying longer, that's why there's additional tracking. And I hope that I've answered the question in a way that helps you distinguish between the two. So when you log in to your account on student aid, if you're in PSLF, you're going to see a category of qualifying payments, right? And then you're going to see another tracker that shows you have so many number of payments that are pending certification. The ones that are pending certification, and I promise you this will make sense once you log into your account on studentaid.gov, those are the ones that you have to submit another form for in order to get them from pending to actually counted.
All right. So I want to reiterate something you said because we got a couple questions about it. Public service is any job. If you work at a public library, and in fact, an academic library, at different kinds of libraries. If you've been a teacher, particularly in a public school, but not exclusively, there are other jobs. If you're a public defender, you're a social worker, any of those jobs, even if you did a different, so you did 3 years, you were a lawyer, 3 years, you were a firefighter, 3 years, you were a librarian. If you are making qualifying payments and working at the minimum required hours, in other words, it can't be 15 hours a week, but whatever it is, provided any of those jobs, all of that employment will count as a public service employment. So I hope that that makes
Yes,
sense and is clear.
yes.
And it
And
doesn't matter if you're a different employer,
no,
right? You'll get the employment certified by each of those employers in that time. There's someone in their HR department that is going
that
to fill out that form.
that is correct. And something else that there's a couple of additional points that I want to make sure that I highlight. So you don't have to work in public service the full time. However, you will not lose credit. Okay. So basically, what happens is, let's say you work in public service for like 7 years, right? And you're like, oh my goodness, I am tired of, I need a break from public service. Well, whatever payments you've certified up to that date, you're not going to lose credit. You're just not going to gain any credit for any new employment that you take in the private sector. All right. So let's say you work in the private sector for 2 years and you decide, oh, let me hurry up and come back to public service so that I can try and get this forgiveness. You're not losing any ground other than time. When you come back, you start with the new employer, you submit a new form. Your time with that new employer, that's now going to start counting towards your uh, forgiveness counts. So it does not have to be consecutive. So I hope that that helps for some of y'all.
Yes, I think that answered a few of the questions. I'm going to scroll back though, because there's a situation that's occurring to quite a few people. Mohila, so for those of you who don't know, that is one of the servicers, tells me that my IDR recertification is due by October 14th of this year. But FSA won't let me recertify. What do I do? I'm not even able to click through to choose a plan besides the SAFE plan.
So I would just push back on the loan servicer. And actually, if you want, you could copy and paste the link. I think I have it in the resources somewhere with the updates from federal student aid that say, I'm pretty sure it's near the bottom on their homepage where it talks about income driven repayment plan certification deadline extended. So literally, you could say, hey, I'm not recertifying at this time. and include a screenshot or the link. I know that the loan servicers are struggling to get up to date too, and sometimes it's hit or miss as far as the representative that you talk to. If the information that you're hearing from the representative at loan servicing does not make sense, that's an excellent example of asking for a supervisor to verify or clarify.
And I can speak to that. It's the rep is hit or miss, which is really important. If they're not listening, if you can't get a hold of them, have those links to the OBMS person in our state and the CFPB handy in case you come up with a challenge. I have a few other questions. I've never heard this, so maybe you know the answer to this. How does forgiveness work if my husband and I consolidated our loans?
Okay, so I don't get this question very often. However, there is a group that is doing advocacy for what is called joint spousal consolidation loans. There is now a link to a page dedicated to that on federal student aid. So I do highly encourage that you take a look at that. They are actively working, and there will probably be more updates to come as far as separating those loans and getting you guys eligible for loan forgiveness.
Excellent. Another question. For those with private loans, is there anything out there to assist with moving to federal loans to be able to take advantage of this, or are we just out of luck? That comes up a lot. Private loans.
Unfortunately, I am sad to say that there's no assistance for private loans. Everything that I have presented to you today is specifically related to federally held student loans. So if you have private student loans, when there are hiccups like the COVID pandemic, private borrowers did not get any of the forbearance that occurred during that time. Even if you're on the SAVE plan, you're not eligible for, you're not eligible based on the loan type, unfortunately. So for the private loan borrowers, I will add, there's no restriction to trying to hustle to pay off those loans early. That's kind of the contrast, right? If you have private loans, you're subject to the bank. Whereas if you are in public service and dealing with federal student loans, like we can't pay ahead. We can't pay it off early. Whereas private borrowers can.
I will say, as a point of support for anyone who holds any private loans, for student loans, the state omnibus person is not just a PSLF person. They work with private loan servicers as well. So where you may not find support in the public service loan space, you may find support at least with an advocate, and they can help act as an intermediary between you and the servicer, even if it's public. So I'll put that link back in the chat. Somebody else, right?
Thanks,
So we have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to try to get as many of these questions in. I graduated in May. I had answered this, but I only have 2 payments to make to reach 120 payments. I'm also ready to retire in January. Congratulations. How long does it take for them to forgive? And am I required to continue working until they do?
Oh, unfortunately, under the current terms, you are required to be working at the time of forgiveness. So I do apologize. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, we don't have good timelines for how long it's taking for forgiveness to actually occur. This whole wrinkle with the legal stay has put a lot of things on hold. This is not the first time that I'm hearing of borrowers being super close to forgiveness, and everyone is just kind of stuck in limbo right now. And I apologize that I don't have a better answer for you. When forgiveness was occurring, it was taking, I would guesstimate, up to 6 months, maybe longer, for the actual processing to occur. There's a lot that's involved because if you've overpaid, they will send you refund checks or pay you a refund for anything that was overpaid based on when they assess the account. So let's say you did that by auto debit, you may get your refund via direct deposit. If you paid by actual check, I've known borrowers that have gotten a stack of checks once forgiveness has been granted and overpayments are being refunded.
Thank you. And now we have our last question. So it's like a two-part question. So just to confirm, can we retroactively submit qualifying payments as long as they occurred after 2007? That's the first part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
So
then,
yes, submit forms for all the employers that you have had that were public service employers from 2007 to 2024.
okay, so thank you. And then the second part, and I guess I'm just going to ask this part, is an IDR payment a qualifying payment for PSLF?
Yes. So basically, there's 4 repayment plans, right? If it's not one of those 4, it's not going to count.
And enrolling in the IDR plan is enrolling in PSLF, correct?
No.
No. Okay. So that's the other
No.
answer to your question,
So,
Chloe.
so income-driven repayment, remember I keep saying the income-driven repayment is available to all borrowers. So if you're having a problem, with your loan payment and it's too high, that's the first strategy that I encourage borrowers to pursue. Don't go for deferment. Don't go for forbearance if you can avoid it. The only time you want to be in forbearance is if the government is specifying the forbearance. Okay? Because it means that they're making changes and hopefully positive ones to your account. Other than that, you want to try to get onto an income-driven repayment plan. And I actually have a love-hate relationship with the terminology because income-driven repayment is very confusing because it's thrown around all the time and it covers more than one payment plan. It was even worse when they actually called them income-based repayment because there actually is a plan called income-based repayment, which only heightens the confusion. But yes, no, that is an actual requirement for PSLF.
So we're at time.
So I hope.
Well, I was going to say we're at time. I'm going to stop the recording just so we can upload this. And I want to ensure everybody knows, whoever stuck around and who didn't, you're in this for the long haul. I have
Yes.
made this happen and I'm not special. You can do this and you have a lot of resources. We are going to send you everything that we have on this. We'll continue this conversation as we can and as we need it. Thank you so much for showing up, and thank you, Kyra. This is really important.
Thank you so